world would not be the same. Few people laughed. Few people cried. Most people were silent. I remembered the line from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Vishnu is trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty, and to impress him takes on his multi-armed form and says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." I suppose we all thought that one way or another.
It's early August 1977. Communist Party General Secretary Leonid Brezhnev writes to the American President Jimmy Carter that the Soviet Union has just detected a nuclear weapons test site in South Africa, and to ask that the American government and other governments around the world to take energetic efforts and prevent the emergence of a nuclear weapons state. On the 8th of August 1977, Acting Secretary Warren Christopher reports on a memorandum to the American president that they can find no evidence to back up the Soviets' claim that South Africa has built, is building, or plans to build a nuclear weapons test site in the Kalahari, and that even if South Africa may be conducting nuclear weapons related research, there is essentially no evidence that they have moved from research to actual production. South Africa is the only country to have built nuclear weapons and dismantled them. It abandoned the use of power reactors and built its nuclear program due to the large uranium deposits discovered in the country. The combination of knowledge from its power reactor program and newly discovered uranium led them to pursue a nuclear explosives program. In 1948, South Africa established the Atomic Energy Board, and after signing a 50-year nuclear collaboration agreement with the United States, South Africa was able to acquire a nuclear reactor and highly enriched uranium. Now, why would a country in Africa seek weapons of mass destruction? Well, in October 1977, US Special National Intelligence Estimate attributed South Africa's desire for wanting nuclear weapons to the country's growing feelings of isolation and perceptions of major military threat. We can basically chop South Africa's desire for wanting nuclear weapons to three main reasons. Firstly, South Africa had doubts about the true intentions of Western powers as a result of apartheid and the fact that they had a United Nations military embargo imposed on them. Secondly, the introduction of Cuban forces into Angola reinforced their fears of major military threat from their neighboring countries. And lastly, they feared the threat of Soviet expansion. And given the fact that the Soviet Union had such strong ties with the anti-apartheid movement, you kind of understand why the apartheid government felt like it would not bode well for them. So in 1978, P.W. Botha becomes the Prime Minister of South Africa and a nuclear strategy is developed, with South Africa constructing 6 gun-type nuclear warheads and a 7th being built in the 1980s, with their nuclear deterrence strategy as follows. The first stage involved Pretoria keeping its nuclear capabilities ambiguous in the absence of hostilities. Secondly, if the threat elevated, South Africa would declare its nuclear deterrent capabilities to one of the major powers in hopes that it would force them to intervene. If necessary, South Africa would demonstrate an underground or an open ocean test to demonstrate their nuclear capabilities. And as a last resort, South Africa would threaten the battlefield with the use of nuclear weapons. Armscor, South Africa's state-owned arms manufacturer, kept the nuclear materials and delivery components separately, with them also having safeguards that allow for the meeting of the two components only after 4 approvals, with one of the authorization codes being in the hands of the president, and unless taken to a certain altitude above a delivery aircraft, South Africa's nuclear devices would not arm. Now, when did Washington conclude that South Africa had nuclear weapons? Well, the United States wanted assurances from South Africa that they were not pursuing a nuclear explosives program. And they asked for assurances. But even with receiving these assurances, they still had doubts and asked for commitments, yet they really did not follow through. And interestingly enough, after concerns from the Soviet Union and the United States, these two great powers, South Africa opted to dismantle part of its testing site and to hide the program and dismantle any evidence of a nuclear explosive testing site. Now, unfortunately for them, on the 22nd of September 1979, an unusual double flash was seen above the South Atlantic, recorded by a satellite known as Vela 6911, with the pattern highlighting it being clear. It was a nuclear explosion. And suspicion immediately fell on South Africa or Israel, including the possibility of an Israeli-South African nuclear collaboration, given the fact that the two countries had such deep clandestine defense ties at the time, which, gone are the days. Anyway, the Carter administration's concern with South Africa becoming nuclear is that it could accrue political benefits for the Soviet Union, and it could also inspire revolutionary movements in Africa. Now, by 1989, South Africa's security was seen as having improved due to the decline of the Soviet Union. And with the departure of Cuban forces from Angola, and with F.W. de Klerk seeking an end to apartheid and wanting South Africa to be welcomed back into the international community, an order was issued to terminate the nuclear weapons program. South Africa's nuclear materials were then returned to the Atomic Energy Corporation, where they were stored according to internationally accepted procedures. Armscor's facilities were then contaminated and dedicated to non-nuclear purposes. South Africa then joined the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons as a non-nuclear weapon state and allowed international inspections of its former nuclear weapons program. And in May 1993, the South African Parliament passed the Non-Proliferation of Weapons of Mass Destruction Act, which committed South Africa to abstaining from the development of nuclear weapons. In June 1996, South Africa was admitted to the UN Conference on Disarmament in Geneva, and in September, South Africa signed the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. So, what is the status of South Africa's nuclear program currently? Well, South Africa is a producer, possessor, and exporter of nuclear materials and technologies. It still possesses a large quantity of highly enriched uranium. It is a growing producer of nuclear energy. Eskom, the South African energy utility, operates two power nuclear reactors, Koeberg 1 and 2, which together produce 1,800 megawatts electric. Yet, South Africa has had problems with its nuclear program, including concerns about the security of its facilities. In November 2007, 4 armed intruders broke into the Pelindaba nuclear facility near Pretoria, where supplies of weapons-grade uranium are stored. The men breached an electronically sealed control room, shot an off-duty worker, and escaped. Around the same time, a separate group of intruders was prevented from breaking into another section of the facility. And even though no HEU was stolen, the break-in demonstrated the vulnerability of the Pelindaba facility. South Africa has since invested millions of dollars and enlisted the United States' help in improving on-site security and enhancing its regulatory framework. Thank you for watching. Until next time, cheers.